r/AskReddit. What is the most rich thing you've seen wealthy people say/do casually? My friends bought a house in Palm Springs, but the renovation was taking too long, so they just bought a second house in Beverly Hills to live in during the renovations. They kept both. I rented a little apartment in a nice, brand new complex a few years ago. The lovely family upstairs, that lived in the $3 million plus penthouse, bought it as they were renovating their $10 million plus house nearby and didn't want to rent during the process. Was at a bar with the multi-billionaire CEO of the company I worked for. He made fun of Oprah for only having one jet, then went on to tell me to never buy helicopters because they are built by the lowest bidder. Planes are the better choice. Bob, my car didn't even have air conditioning. So I worked part-time at a strip club and we had some very rich clientele. Some of them come in all the time and we get to know a lot about them. They get to know a lot about us. Well, one of our security guys died of a sudden massive heart attack. One of the rich clientele just called the funeral home and paid for everything. Like there was no second thought. We were all taking up a collection to help a bit, and he just dropped the whole bill just like that. I mean, I see a lot of really rich behavior, but that one was just so mind-blowing. My dad knows a billionaire who had a French chateau disassembled and reassembled in the US. He acted like it was just as normal as building a house. My dad's been there a few times and said it's an insane property with a huge man-made lake and huge sprawling lawns. Going to their apartment in the city, so they have a place to hang out in between shopping at stores. Their apartment is only for that purpose. I used to work at a jeweler and the stories are endless. Clients would talk about how they just got back from a months-long trip on a yacht or some exotic island. I'm just like, cool, I put in 60+ hours this week and have worked every day of the week, lol. The shit that I wouldn't get at all is the watch guys. I had a client come in one time and ask for the cheapest watch we had, so he didn't have to worry about it on his trip. He ended up going with a $800 watch, not the cheapest, and while I was checking him out, he said he was going to throw it away after the trip. I tried talking him out of it and just said return it afterwards, but then he seemed insulted. Other watch guys would pay $1,000 every year just to get a little scratch on their Rolex that only they notice buffed out. I'd explain to them that they are shaving precious metal off every time and ruining the integrity of the watch, but they don't give a duck because their egos are so massive. We'd hold private events and encourage clients to bring their friends and it'd always turn into a dick swinging contest of who can spend more. Absolutely wild environment, and I was absolutely burnt out after 2 years. Most money I ever made, but most miserable I've ever been. I worked in a sporting goods store in my early 20s and got absolutely screamed at by an old man for not knowing who he was when I asked him for ID. Apparently he owned like half the town and others at the store would kiss his ass. At $9 an hour I wasn't paid enough to kiss his ass, even if I cared who he was. I wasn't from there and had only seen him come in a few times to buy random shit. But either way, the federal ducking government requires you produce ID to purchase a firearm, and I was doing my job. It's been over 20 years and my husband, who has heard the story, will randomly look at me and bust out, "You seriously don't know who I am?" I once saw Jeff Bezos pay $100,000 to get a guy off the stage at an auction event. The guy on stage wasn't going to leave until he reached his goal, and Jeff was tired of listening to him. By Felicia. It was from an 8-year-old. My very wealthy friend got remarried and her son said he wouldn't mind staying with me while they went on their honeymoon. As we took our seats on the plane, he looked so confused. He sheepishly asked, "Who are all these people on your plane?" "Oh, my little dude. Pay USPS to keep the local branch of their post office open. It had been selected to close, so they didn't have to drive as far to go to the post office." Someone once asked me where I summer. Never felt so poor than saying I'm here. Using summer as a verb is a sign we are not in the same tax bracket. I had a friend of mine casually ask if I wanted to go to Dubai for a week to do some skydiving training in a couple of weeks. My response was no, I have to work for a living. Blew my mind when they asked me, like it was no biggie, to duck out for a week and blow $15K. I photograph luxury homes and architecture for a living. There's a neighborhood I do a lot of work in called Silverleaf, and it's probably the most exclusive neighborhood in the valley. The bottom part of the neighborhood is your typical wealthy people's homes. Doctors, lawyers, business owners, etc. Extremely nice houses, but still attainable for anyone who wants to put in the effort to work those types of careers. As you drive towards the back of the neighborhood, you start heading up a mountain that's divided into two parts, Upper Canyon and the summit. There are probably 100 houses up there. The houses start close to 15 million. But several are over 20 to 30. One of the builders I work with is developing a house he's asking about 60 million for. I work Upper Canyon every month or two, and even though all of the houses are owned, half or less are lived in. For some, it's a vacation home they might visit for a few weeks or months of the year, and for others, it's an investment and a place to park their money. I photographed a $15 million house there a few years ago. The owner was selling it because he bought a $29 million house literally 2 or 3 lots up because he liked the views more. He's a Canadian business owner and spends maybe a few months of the year in the valley, if that. I'm used to it now, but for a long time I couldn't wrap my head around how much money some people have. My millionaire aunt scoffing at the idea that my single mother taking care of me and my younger brother couldn't find a place to live because $3,000 a month is easily affordable. Not taking free expensive stuff given to them because they probably already have a lot and/or they think it's something only poor people do. It's ironic because all these brands try to give those they perceive as rich more free stuff that they don't want or need. I had a friend whose parents obscenely wealthy, like she'd pay $100k every year to bring her horses from Canada to Florida for the summer to ride at the stable I was working at, and her horses were worth $300k plus. She offered to bring me back with her to Canada to take care of her 3 horses full-time. Lol. She'd always take the free stuff and pass it along to me. It was awesome to use. I never could have afforded it otherwise. I had no idea how much they got. Friends' wealthy parents were going to give me a set of furniture for free until I wound up moving cross country. Couldn't accept it. Before I was to take it, I asked for the manufacturer so I could take measurements for my house to make it all fit. They responded, "Oh, we are not sure, it's pretty old." Here I thought it was maybe from the 70s. Yes, it was from the 70s. The duck in 1870s. From France, and it was all handmade Louis XV pieces. When I showed my home decor obsessed mother, she appraised it all. Some were north of $5,000 just for a small hallway desk. We are both upset about it to this day. There is a large liquor store near me. They have very expensive bottles in the back room. One Christmas I was standing in line. The man in front of me had 1 case of wine, 12 bottles of various variety. The checker said, "Okay, that will be $27,455. WTF. Guy hands over his credit card. Followed him out, drove away in a Bentley. I live not far from an old, now abandoned, castle in France. It was bought decades ago by a Chinese couple. They had the staircase taken out and shipped to China and just left the place and never returned. It's been neglected since. Had one of the outside salesmen drop in and we were talking about clothes for some reason. He said he donates his clothes to charity every year, so he doesn't buy the very expensive shirts. His shirts are $300 each. Then he tells me he does buy decent shoes though. He showed me a company online where most of the shoes cost more than my car. How do we work for the same company and live that differently? When being surprised that airlines will allow a larger looking backpack in the overhead, he said, "Oh, it's been so long since I've flown commercially, I had no idea." He said it in such a shy manner, like he was embarrassed to say he flies privately. This is a 75-year-old that looks like he's a regular middle-class Joe and gives off no hint that he's extremely wealthy. Contact her here. Lady did not like the shape of the pool at the new house. Gets the job to change the shape. Does the job. So I tell her we can guarantee the workmanship for 5 years, but not any longer. She says cool, we are only here for 3. In 1994, I watched the CEO and founder of my employer, with an estimated net worth of at least $100 million, drop a $20 bill and other bills on the sidewalk. He glanced at it and then kept walking. Well, this may not be a rich thing, I don't know, maybe an unexpected rich thing, but it was memorable. One year about 15 years ago, I was taking some vacation days right before Christmas. I took my AR-15 down to the Scottsdale Gun Club shooting range, which is a pretty public range that also rents guns. So I'm in my lane with my AR and a few handguns, shooting away. Next lane to me, I notice two elderly guys, one in a suit, one dressed more casually. They're shooting a pistol, like a .38 or 9mm. I can't help noticing the guy in the suit looks familiar. 10 minutes later, I realize who it is. It's the self-made billionaire founder and owner of Discount Tire Company. I know him because my wife worked there and I'd seen him at their annual company Christmas parties. Super nice guy. First name is Bruce. Basically the richest person in Arizona. So when I next have a chance, I get his attention, and he's all smiles, because he's a nice guy, super friendly, shakes my hand, etc. Like an idiot I'm trying to talk to him, and tell him my wife works there, etc. Which is silly, because we're in an active shooting range with hearing protection on, and he's like 80. Anyways, I notice as he's addressing me, he keeps kind of peeking around me, into my lane. I notice he's eyeing my AR, which is picketed out, has a bipod, and looks badass. Noticing this, I step aside, and gesture to him, if he'd like to hold it. I give him a quick run through of the magazine operation, trigger, charging handle, and safety. He's watching and grinning. Then I hand it to him, and hand him a mag, and show him how to load it. By now the other guy he was with has stopped shooting, and is now watching us. Mr. Billionaire steps into my lane, squeezes off about 10 rounds at the paper target, his smile increasing with each one. Then he turns, puts down the rifle and turns to me with a huge smile, clasps my shoulder, and gives me a vigorous handshake. I give him a quick salute and he goes back to his friend. They zip up their gun and head out of the range area back into the main showroom. So I finish my session. I'm there for maybe 20 more minutes, then I pack up and get ready to leave. As I leave the range area and exit back into the main showroom, I find that the other guy's now there waiting for me. He shakes my hand and starts thanking me profusely, saying Mr. Hall really enjoyed that. Mr. Hall is what everyone called him. He pulls out a small notebook and asks me for my name, my wife's name. So I say, sure, and give him that info. I then stop to ask him what happened. What was he doing there? What was that all about? He tells me that this is an annual tradition for Mr. Hall. His wife hates guns and won't let him own one, but once a year, he's allowed to go down to the range and rent a pistol and fire it, and this was that time. Meanwhile, this dude could afford to buy the building we are in 100 times over. He thanks me and tells me again how much it meant to him. I say, okay, cool, and then we part company. I go home. And that evening tell my wife the story. She's like, that's cool, but doesn't think too much of it. A few weeks go by, and one day she's at work, and her phone rings. It's Billionaire's assistant. Are you at your desk? Mr. Hall is on his way down. She's frozen with panic and like, WTF. There's like 2,000 people at that office, and why is he coming to see her? So 2 minutes later, he shows up, and he's got a big box of stuff with him. He starts by greeting her and begins telling her the story about me and the shooting range. After she stops panicking and relaxes, he comes into her cubicle and pulls up a chair and starts chatting her up about the photos of our kids. Starts asking about me, photos from vacations, cruises, etc. and various other stuff. He tells her again how glad he ran into me. The box he brought is full of gifts for our kids. Toy cars, books, stuffed animals, and other tire related stuff. Nothing real fancy, just some thoughtful gifts. He clearly had done research, because he knew we had 2 boys and he knew where to find her cubicle, so he'd checked it out before he approached her. And that's my story. I guess it goes to show money can't buy everything, and sometimes even billionaires could use a little kindness and appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.